The Lucky Bounce wasn't much to look at, an old cargo freighter patched together with decades of mismatched repairs. It groaned in protest as it drifted through the nebulous blue haze, engines humming with the low, steady pulse of a ship that had seen too much but refused to die. Captain Tessa Rourke sat in the pilot's chair, boots on the console, idly flipping a coin between her fingers. Business had been slow. No high-risk jobs. No imperial blockades. No thrilling escapes. Just cargo runs and an overwhelming sense of boredom. Then the alarms blared. "Incoming vessel!" called out Jace, her navigator. "Big one." "And Imperial." Tessa's grin was instant. Finally, some entertainment. On the holoscreen, the unmistakable silhouette of an Arakshar dreadnought darkened the void. Its sleek, obsidian hull bristled with turrets, a perfect representation of the Empire's cold efficiency. It was a warship, not a negotiator. A transmission came through, voice clipped and authoritative. "This is Commander Threx Valiar of the Inevitable Dominion. Your vessel is in violation of Imperial Customs law. You will power down engines and prepare for inspection." Tess stretched lazily. "Hail them back." Jace tapped the console, and Tess leaned in. "Imperial Dreadnought, this is Captain Tess Rourke of the Lucky Bounce. Before we agree to any inspections, I have one critical question." A pause. Then Valiar's voice returned, slightly wary. "State your question." Tess smirked. "Did you bring snacks?" Silence. Then, "Repeat your transmission." Jace was already laughing. So was the rest of the crew. Tess continued deadpan. "Snacks? You know, travel rations. Dried fruit? Crackers? Maybe those little sandwiches with the crusts cut off." A low, irritated growl came through the speakers. "You will comply immediately." Right, but see, our airlock is kinda tricky. It plays music when it opens. Really loud music." More silence. Then, "Explain." Tess shrugged. "We had an engineer with a sense of humor. It triggers entry of the gladiators. You know, the circus tune. Every time someone boards. It's policy at this point." Jace was practically doubled over, while Rhea, their weapons officer, gave Tess an exasperated look. "You're gonna get us shot." Tess ignored her, watching the comms. The Empire was struggling with this. Finally, Valiar snapped. "Proceed with docking procedures. This nonsense will cease immediately upon boarding." "Oh, buddy," Tess murmured under her breath. "It's only just begun." The Lucky Bounce's airlock cycled open with a triumphant, blaring rendition of circus music. Tess stood at the entrance, arms crossed, as the first of the Arakshar troops stepped in, their rigid formations momentarily faltering at the absurdity of the tune. Their armor gleamed under the cargo bay lights, stark contrast to the haphazard, cluttered mess of the human ship. "Welcome aboard," Tess declared. "Try the fish. It's terrible." Commander Valiar stepped in last, tall and imposing in his deep red officer's uniform. His expression was carved from stone, though a faint vein pulsed at his temple. "Enough," he barked. "You will stand down and comply with all Imperial inspections." Tess gestured grandly. "By all means. Inspect away. But fair warning, we're carrying highly dangerous contraband." The scanning officer stiffened. "What contraband?" Jace handed Valiar a datapad. He skimmed it, then froze. "Rubber chickens? Inflatable flamingos?" He looked up, eyes narrowing. Tess sighed dramatically. "Devastating psychological weapons," Jace added. "The flamingos have been known to cause severe distress in bureaucratic species." Valiar exhaled through his nose. "You are testing my patience." Tess patted his shoulder. "Oh, Commander, I'd never do that. I respect you too much," Jace muttered. "And because it's already gone." A trooper's voice cut through the exchange. "Commander! Their ship AI is interfering with our scanners." "Correction," Rhea called from the upper walkway. "We rerouted your scanners. They're detecting, well, you'll see." Valiar turned as a monitor lit up, displaying a live scan of the Lucky Bounce's cargo hold. Among legitimate crates of supplies, the scanner highlighted threat items. 144 Imperial Officer action figures, limited edition, mint condition. A live recording of Galactic Pop Hits Karaoke Edition. 1 hyper-intelligent parrot with a foul mouth. Valyar clenched his jaw. I assume this is a joke. Tess nodded sagely. A good one, I think. Valyar turned to his troops. Confiscate their cargo. Seize control of this ship. A pause. Tess's crew barely reacted. Rhea stretched, cracking her knuckles. Jace raised an eyebrow. Finally Tess sighed. Commander. You don't want to do that. Valyar stiffened. And why not? Tess tilted her head, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Because the moment you do, we'll start Phase 2. Valyar hesitated. What is Phase 2? Tess gave him a wicked grin. We start taking bets on which one of you snaps first. Jace chimed in. My money's on the guy with the twitchy eye. The officer in question immediately straightened. I do not have a twitch. He stopped, realizing the trap, then let out a sharp breath. This is absurd. That's the fun part. Tess agreed. Valyar's hand hovered over his sidearm. Captain Rourke, your games will not protect you forever. Tess stepped closer, her playful tone dipping into something quieter, sharper. Commander, I respect power. Real power. The kind that knows when it's being played. If you want to shoot us, do it. But deep down, you know this isn't worth it. You fire the first shot, and suddenly this goes from a routine inspection to a diplomatic disaster. And for what? A cargo ship full of nonsense? A long silence filled the airlock. Finally, Valyar lowered his weapon. I will report this incident. You will not get away so easily next time. Tess clapped her hands. Fantastic. Do put in a good word for our snacks inquiry. Valyar whirled, marching back into his shuttle, his troops following. As the doors sealed, the ship AI gave a final, triumphant declaration. Thanks for visiting the Lucky Bounce. Come again, if you dare. The Imperial shuttle launched, and the dreadnought turned away. Jace whistled. I can't believe that worked. Rhea shook her head. We're gonna die someday because of you. Tess stretched, dropping back into her chair with a satisfied sigh. Maybe. But not today. The Lucky Bounce's cargo bay was a controlled disaster zone. Crates sat stacked at odd angles, loose cables trailed across the floor, and someone had taped googly eyes to the environmental control panel. Tess stood with her crew in formation, if you could call it that. Jace had a party horn in his mouth, Rhea looked like she regretted every life choice that led her here, and the ship's AI cheerfully looped circus music from unseen speakers. Shuttle's approaching, Jace reported, eyes on the monitors. Tess rolled her neck. All right, people. Showtime. The Imperial boarding party arrived with clockwork precision. 40 armored soldiers filed down the ramp in perfect formation, weapons holstered but visible, every step calculated. Behind them, Commander Valyar descended like a thundercloud, eyes cold, jaw tight. The music blared louder. Valyar's mouth twitched. Tess stepped forward with a smile bright enough to blind. Welcome aboard! Before we begin, I'd like to present you with these. She gestured. Jace handed out laminated VIP boarding passes, featuring cartoon versions of each Imperial rank. The soldiers hesitated, confusion flickering behind their visors. Valyar's voice cut through the awkward pause. Captain Rourke? This mockery will end now. Mockery? Tess gasped. Commander, this is hospitality. Rhea cleared her throat. You're also just in time for the awards ceremony. The what? With a dramatic flourish, Jace produced a tray of spray-painted, obviously fake medals. Rhea handed one to a bewildered sergeant. The medal read Best Attempt at Humor Comprehension, 3rd place. Valyar inhaled sharply. Search the ship. The soldiers spread out, but it didn't get better for them. Each door they opened triggered pre-recorded sound bites. Congratulations! You've unlocked secret level 1. Warning, sarcasm levels critical. Please consult a sense of humor before proceeding. In the engine bay, the scanning team found a life-size cutout of Valiar himself, wearing bunny ears and holding a sign that read "Relax, Commander, even empires need a day off." Reports came in over Imperial comms. "Sir, there's a ball pit in Cargo Bay 3. We've located unauthorized life forms. Correction, plush octopuses with monocles. The crew's parrot keeps calling me a bureaucratic slug." Valiar rubbed his temple. "Cease all commentary. Proceed with standard protocol." The soldiers pressed on, mechanical and grim, but the lucky bounce was a labyrinth of mischief. Each scanning attempt was sabotaged by clever diversions, cargo manifests that read like bad puns, engineering readouts describing flux capacitor irregularities, and temperature control panels offering polar or tropical climate options, with actual climate shifts following. Valiar turned back to Tess. "What is the purpose of this insanity?" "Commander," Tess said softly, "you've got to understand. When you show up with that giant ship and those angry faces, most captains panic. But panic is boring. We prefer improvisation." His jaw flexed. "I will not be made a fool of." Tess tilted her head. "You came on board expecting submission. You got a welcome party. That's not foolishness. That's surprise. Maybe even a gift." Before Valiar could respond, a trooper's panicked voice cut in. "Sir, the ship's AI, it's taken control of our comms feed." Valiar spun to the nearest console. His own transmission channel now played a laugh track that chimed every time he spoke. He glared at Tess, furious. "Disable it." Tess held up her hands. "It's out of my control. Then you will be held responsible." The mood darkened. The soldiers shifted, hands close to their weapons. The playfulness teetered on the edge of danger. Tessa's smile faded, her voice low and serious. "Commander, you're standing on a civilian ship. You have overwhelming force, but no legitimate cause. If you escalate this, it won't just be embarrassing. It'll be political suicide." Valiar's fists clenched at his sides. His pride warred with logic. Rhea broke the tension with a carefully placed comment. "Sir, we did prepare one diplomatic solution." Valiar's eyes narrowed. "What now?" Tess gestured to a screen lighting up behind her. The crew had arranged a diplomatic challenge interface. Jace spoke in his most official tone. "According to newly ratified Article 17, Subsection B, Imperial boarding conflicts may be resolved through a cultural exchange ceremony." Valiar's nostrils flared. "What form does this exchange take?" "Karaoke," Rhea said, utterly deadpan. The room fell silent. Valiar stared at her, as though she had spoken in static. "You cannot be serious." Tess shrugged. "Commander, diplomacy is serious business." He looked from her to his soldiers, who now stood awkwardly, unsure whether to move or melt into the deck plating. "If I refuse?" Tessa's expression hardened just a fraction. "Then the Empire's only narrative is that you stormed a civilian ship, found nothing but rubber chickens and karaoke machines, and left in failure. Or worse, you overreacted." For a long moment, the only sound was the faint echo of the laugh track still playing softly through the Imperial's comms. Valiar's lips pressed into a razor-thin line. "Very well." The crew erupted into cheers. Minutes later, the makeshift stage was set. The Imperial soldiers stood along one wall, visibly uncomfortable. Tessa's crew gathered opposite, practically vibrating with glee. First up, Sergeant Core of the Empire. He selected an old Earth ballad, attempting to mimic the tone and lyrics with mechanical precision. The result was horrifying. Tess winced. "Brave effort," Rhea whispered. "He sounds like a malfunctioning toaster." Next, Jace took the stage. He chose a ridiculous, upbeat human pop song that involved nonsensical dance moves. The crew joined in, deliberately butchering choreography. Even the Imperial soldiers couldn't maintain perfect stoicism. A few twitched with suppressed laughter. Valiar watched with icy detachment. This proves nothing. Tess smirked. Oh, it's just beginning. The final round approached. The Empire's turn. They conferred in hushed tones. Finally, they sent forward a junior officer. His song choice? A misinterpreted human blues track, delivered in monotone, with the occasional unintended growl. Jace stage whispered. Someone make it stop. At last, Valiar spoke. Enough. He stepped forward, his expression unreadable. I have entertained your foolishness. Now we are finished. Tess inclined her head, respectful. We appreciate your diplomatic flexibility. Valiar turned sharply. We will report your behavior. The Empire will not tolerate further insult. His troops filed out in silence. As the shuttle door sealed, Tess exhaled slowly. Jace broke the quiet. Commander Valiar singing blues. That image is burned into my brain forever. Tess sat back, satisfied. Good. He won't forget it either. For 2 blissful hours after the Imperial shuttle departed, the Lucky Bounce basked in victorious silence. Tess lounged in her captain's chair, sipping terrible instant coffee, watching the swirling nebula beyond the viewport. That, Jace announced from his console, was the single dumbest and most glorious encounter I've ever witnessed. Rhea snorted. We just humiliated an Imperial dreadnought with karaoke. Tess smiled. Let it never be said humans lack culture. Her relaxation lasted exactly 3 more minutes. Captain? Jace's tone flattened. Tess sat up. What? Jace pointed to the screen. They're coming back. On the holo display, the massive silhouette of the inevitable Dominion pivoted and accelerated toward them. It didn't approach like before, with formality and measured distance. It came fast. Aggressive. Rhea's eyes narrowed. That's not a polite return trip. Battle stations, Tess ordered, her coffee forgotten. Jace's fingers flew over controls. Shields up. Weapons powered. Tess muttered under her breath. I was hoping they had more self-control. A second transmission crackled through. Valiar's voice was colder, quieter. Dangerous. Captain Rourke? You have made a mockery of Imperial authority. Prepare to be boarded by force. Wow, Jace muttered. He really didn't enjoy karaoke. Ignore the sarcasm, Tess said. She keyed the comm. Commander Valiar. I suggest you rethink this. No response. On the tactical display, 4 Imperial shuttles launched. No slow dock this time, they were coming in hot. Rhea, Tess called. What's your assessment? Rhea's face was hard. They're serious. They're not coming to scan. They're coming to seize the ship and arrest us. Tess nodded once. All right. Time to show them Phase 3. Jace blinked. We have a Phase 3? Tess grinned grimly. We do now. The first shuttle latched onto the starboard airlock. The moment the clamps engaged, the Lucky Bounce's defense subroutines triggered. Klaxons blared. Strobe lights flashed disorientingly in the boarding corridor. The ship's AI blared through every speaker. Warning, this airlock is infested with invisible space ferrets. Proceed at your own risk. Inside the boarding passage, cameras showed Imperial soldiers pausing. One trooper actually lifted a foot and checked his boot for ferrets. Tess leaned forward, watching them hesitate. Beautiful. The second shuttle docked on the port side. The Lucky Bounce rerouted power to magnetic disruptors. A subtle jolt shivered through the airlock's metal skin. The Imperials felt it instantly, pulling back as static sparks snapped between armor plates. Jace smirked. It's like they're licking a live wire. The third shuttle tried the cargo hold. This time, the AI greeted them cheerfully. Welcome to Cargo Bay 3. Please remove shoes and prepare for the foam party. The doors hissed open and a wall of biodegradable foam exploded into the faces of armed, humorless Imperial troopers. Tess clapped once. We really should patent that system. The fourth shuttle, apparently learning from its comrades' misery, attempted to cut through the hull instead of docking. Rhea pointed at the screen. They're slicing into the maintenance deck. Tess shook her head. Poor choice. The moment the breach was made, the Lucky Bounce's secondary defense measure activated, zero gravity inversion in that section. Imperial soldiers found themselves floating awkwardly, spinning end over end in confusion. Tess activated the comm to that deck. Attention boarders! In this ship, we prefer interpretive dance over violence. Please adjust accordingly. Rhea coughed, barely hiding a laugh. Valear's face reappeared on the main screen, red with frustration. Enough! You will surrender or be destroyed! Tess sat back, face composed but voice razor-sharp. Commander Valear, look at your men. Look at your operation. You're not losing to us. You're losing to your own arrogance. You came here with overwhelming firepower, certain you could crush us. Instead, you've been outwitted by a cargo freighter crew armed with nothing but quick thinking and a sense of humor. He sneered. You think humor is a weapon? Tess's voice softened, deadly calm. It's the sharpest blade in the galaxy, Commander. You can't block it. You can't shoot it. And it cuts deeper than any Imperial sanction. His glare faltered for the first time. Rhea nodded toward the sensors. Captain, they're pulling back their boarding parties. On the monitors, the Imperial shuttles disengaged, limping away with cargo holds full of foam, scrambled NAV systems, and possibly permanent embarrassment. Valear's face twisted with humiliation. You will pay for this, he said finally, low and vicious. Tess gave him a small, respectful nod. Maybe. But today, you've lost. The comm line cut. They watched in silence as the inevitable Dominion slowly turned, its pride wounded deeper than any blaster strike. The dreadnought drifted back into hyperspace, humiliated and defeated by clowns in a cargo hauler. The moment the Imperial signal vanished, Jace let out a long breath. We survived, he said, amazed. Again. Rhea leaned back against the bulkhead. I don't know whether to laugh or vomit. Tess smiled softly. Do both. Just not on the controls. She sat forward, letting the adrenaline drain from her limbs. The ship felt lighter now, the silence more comfortable. Jace cleared his throat. You think he'll be back? Absolutely, Tess said. And next time? Rhea asked. Tess's grin returned, sharp as ever. Next time, we'll have Phase 4. 3 days passed in relative calm. The Lucky Bounce drifted through the outer sectors, patched up from minor hull scratches, and the crew settled into cautious relaxation. Tess knew better than to think it was over. They always came back. Jace was the first to notice. Long-range scans picking up energy signatures. Tess didn't even ask. Imperials? Unless someone else has a capital-class signature with a bad attitude, yes. Rhea leaned forward. How many? Jace's voice went tight. 2 dreadnoughts this time. Tess stood. Her expression wasn't fear, it was focus. All right. Phase 4. Jace hesitated. You were serious? I never joke about escalation. The crew mobilized. There was no panic. Only resolve. The Lucky Bounce may not have been a warship, but they had preparation, creativity, and a secret weapon no empire could counter: unpredictability. The first Imperial dreadnought, the dominant will, dropped out of hyperspace alongside the inevitable Dominion, scarred but clearly eager for revenge. This time, their strategy was brute force. No negotiations. No boarding attempts. Shields at max, Tess ordered. The Imperials opened fire. Plasma bolts raked across space. The Lucky Bounce twisted and dodged with agility no heavy vessel could match. Tess felt every lurch of the ship, every breath from her crew. Return fire, she said calmly. The ship's modest cannons spat focused bursts at the Imperial sensor arrays, not to destroy, but to blind. Rhea targeted weak points, leaving their telemetry scrambled. Jace called out. They're trying to lock tractor beams. Deploy decoys, Tess responded. Metal canisters exploded outward, releasing swirling clouds of reflective chaff and hundreds of inflatable human-shaped dummies wearing ridiculous costumes. Clowns, pirates, ballerinas. The Imperial scanners lit up with false targets, confused beyond belief. Valer's face flashed on screen again. This time, his uniform was perfect, but his composure was cracking. You cannot win this. Tess smiled. Winning's overrated. But confusing you? That never gets old. Valer's lips twisted. We will disable your engines and seize your ship. Good luck finding them, Tess replied. Before he could respond, the Lucky bounced dove into an asteroid field. The Imperials followed, slower, less nimble, their massive ships struggling to navigate. Jace, time for the final trick. Aye, Captain. The ship's hull emitted a low-frequency signal. Imperial ship's sensors overloaded with false proximity warnings. Alarms shrieked aboard the dreadnoughts, disorienting their crew. Rhea grinned. They're arguing on open channels. Chaos in stereo. But Valar wasn't entirely outmatched. The Dominant will launched a wave of seeker drones, small, fast, impossible to evade. They're locking onto our energy signature, Jace warned. Tess took a breath. Cut engines. Dump heat. The ship drifted, cold and silent. In the dark of the asteroid belt, they became invisible. The drones streaked past, unable to acquire. Rhea whispered. They're blind. But they'll figure it out. Tess nodded. So let's give them something to find. In the cargo hold, the crew activated Phase 4's masterpiece, the beacon. Jace explained while working. We've encoded a signal that mimics Imperial distress calls, but filled with absurd scenarios: mutiny by sentient ship plants, hostile takeovers by space poultry, the works. Tess smiled tightly. Broadcast it now. Within moments, the Imperials picked up the distress signal. This is Imperial science vessel Cravenstar. Sentient cabbages have taken control, requesting immediate assistance. They're demanding gardening tools and classical opera. Rhea pressed her hand to her mouth to stifle laughter. Valar's comms are flaring, Jace reported. He's ordering ships to investigate the phantom signal. Perfect, Tess said. The two dreadnoughts split their forces, diverting half their fighters to a non-existent crisis. Engines back online, Tess commanded. They shot out of the asteroid field at full speed, leaving confusion and chaos behind. But Valar wasn't done. He realized the deception and ordered pursuit. They're closing fast, Jace warned. We won't outrun them. Tess gave a tight smile. We won't need to. The Lucky Bounce approached the edge of a dense magnetic anomaly field. Navigating it was nearly impossible without precise sensors they just crippled on both Imperial ships. Rhea caught on. They'll follow, and crash right into each other. That's the plan. The Lucky Bounce darted into the anomaly field. Magnetic turbulence buffeted the ship, but the crew adjusted, anticipating every jolt. The Imperial ships, heavier and sensor-blind, followed blindly. Jace read off telemetry. They're colliding with gravitational eddies. Hull strain at critical. Valar's issuing contradictory orders. Tess watched the display as the dreadnoughts drifted off course, scraping each other's hulls, forced to fire retrothrusters to avoid mutual destruction. No, she said. They emerged from the anomaly field, leaving behind two Imperial dreadnoughts tangled in their own pride and magnetic chaos. Valar's face appeared one last time. His uniform was disheveled, sweat beading on his brow. You will never escape Imperial justice, Tess answered, calm and final. We didn't escape. We danced. You brought warships. We brought laughter. Guess who's still standing? His image vanished. Silence filled the bridge. Jace sat back with a sigh. Phase 4 was insane. Rhea shook her head in amazement. We humiliated two dreadnoughts with party tricks and psychological warfare. Tess stood, her voice soft but firm. And we reminded them that human unpredictability is a force they can't conquer. Outside, the stars stretched wide and endless. The Lucky Bounce sailed forward into freedom. Tess smiled. Set course. Anywhere but back. Jace grinned. Plotting the most ridiculous route possible. Rhea looked at Tess. What if they send more? Tess met her gaze without hesitation. Then we'll have a Phase 5,